Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Jesse Karaja with the Community Foundation Tampa Bay. I'm the Senior Vice President of Community Impact. I want to start by welcoming you all to our webinar with information on Hillsborough County's American Rescue Plan nonprofit safety net program. It's nice to see so many of you on the call today. We're excited to be able to partner with Hillsborough County again to assist those in getting those much needed funds to our county's nonprofit programs. A little over a year ago, we were able to work together with Hillsborough County and help award just over $2.8 million to about 123 nonprofits in Hillsborough County. We're working together again this year with some of the American Rescue Plan funds, and we hope to definitely exceed that amount from a year ago. We truly believe nonprofits are the lifeblood of our community. And honestly, I'm not sure what we would have done these last few years without all of you. Before we get started, I wanted to share a little housekeeping. If you have questions during the session, please feel free to add those into the chat. And we are going to monitor those as we go through and try to put responses in. But we also have designed this in such a way we will have time at the end to answer any questions we didn't get to in the chat, and also opportunity for you to add more questions as we go along. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Robert Hendrickson, who is leading the project for Hillsborough County, to tell a little bit about this work. Rob?
Thank you, Jesse. Again, Rob Hendrickson. I work for Hillsborough County. Apologies in advance if my dog just starts barking, because he just did. Of course, timing is everything. For some context, as Jesse mentioned, during the 2020 year, we in the county wanted to make sure we supported nonprofits with our CARES Act dollars. And of course, over time, we've received more funds from the federal government by way of the American Rescue Plan. And on behalf of our commissioners and of course our county leadership, we wanted to make sure that just because we helped nonprofits during that time, we didn't assume you guys were whole or that everything was okay. We realized you need to do a lot with a little, and that the needs are still there. Fundraising may be curtailed, still challenges with some social distancing in the beginning of the year. The point is, we just wanted to make sure you guys had an opportunity, if you prove eligible, to really help your nonprofits continue to do the amazing work you do. In terms of the roles, as Jesse mentioned, the county is leading this by virtue of funding, but our great friends at Community Foundation Tampa Bay are the day in, day out administrators of the program, and you'll hear more about their extremely easy online application portal and what you need to do there. But they're really, again, running this and answering questions and making sure you guys have a process to get approved and paid expeditiously. Just a few highlights. We started this program, I guess it was January 31st, right, guys? And at this point, we have about 2.2 million out the door to just over 100 nonprofits. It runs until June 10th. But if this pace continues, we want to make sure you guys know to get your applications in quickly. If you have your documentation in order, and that is important, you'll hear more about that later. It's about a 25-minute process, so it's fairly painless, but we don't want to leave you guys to wait. We want to make sure you get out there and apply as soon as possible so you can be helped. If you do qualify and are paid, you don't need to repay any of these monies. You do need to kind of keep track of where the money went. And in terms of timeframes, we're really looking at COVID-related expenses and impacts to your bottom line since March 3rd of last year. So a pretty big window. Again, first come, first serve. We're honored to support our nonprofit community. Again, echoing Jesse's sentiments, it's easy to say, but it really is true. We value what you all do. And this program is specifically geared towards helping you do more of that. So again, thank you for joining today. Hopefully this will prove extremely informative for all of you. And we can see your nonprofits flooding into our inbox, so to speak, as we look at helping you guys out. I'm going to hand it over to Katie now.
Thanks, Rob. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Katie Schultz. I am the Senior Director of Community Investments here at the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, and helping the team here administer this opportunity. And so I'm going to go over high level, and I can really emphasize high level because we can't get to every detail today. But I want to go over some of the eligibility requirements. And as we'll probably say multiple times, there's a lot of information on our webpage with our frequently asked questions and more detail about this. So I would encourage you to always reference back to our webpage. But there is eligibility requirements here, and this is really important. We'll go over later how to log into our application, but know that our application is pretty intuitive. And so you're going to need to, ahead of time, kind of note that you meet this eligibility criteria. If at any point during filling out the application, you write no to any of the eligibility criteria, it will end your ability to further go into the application. And that's just so that you're not wasting any time filling out an application that you may not be eligible for. So probably the first and most important eligibility criteria is the location. This funding is for nonprofits who are principally based in Hillsborough County. That includes the city of Tampa, Plant City, and Temple Terrace. Now, we understand that some nonprofits may have a headquarters in somewhere else in the state or somewhere else in the country, but this money is intended for services that are located or physically located within Hillsborough County, and the services that are being provided here in the county. So there is opportunity if your home base is located somewhere else to still apply, but we need to be able to verify that there's a physical address within Hillsborough County, and you will be asked to attest that the money you receive will be utilized in Hillsborough County. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. You're also going to need to attest to providing safety net services. And the safety net services, while I think we can all attest to what different people need, these are the focus areas for this particular funding. You not only need to fit under kind of the larger umbrella of these, but in the application, there's some subcategories under each one of these areas. I'm going to give a few examples, but there's many more options that are in the application. But for medical services, these are going to be things like COVID testing, vaccination programs, general medical services that your organization may provide. Congregate living as a safety net service. This can be nursing homes, shelters, group homes. Food services, providing meals, delivering food, things of that nature. Housing stability services. This could be counseling or legal aid to prevent evictions, housing vouchers, affordable housing, things of that nature. Training and adult education is another option. This could mean digital literacy programming, general job training, internet access, things along those lines, childcare and education services. This could be childcare, newer expanded services, enhancing early learning, after school, summer programming, elder care services. These could be transportation services for those that are homebound or remote programming and other activities. And then the last category is going to be mental health services. This is everything from traditional mental health treatment, substance abuse services, and crisis intervention. So as I mentioned, you'll be asked to select one or more of these and then give a subcategory so that we really understand the type of safety net services that your nonprofit is providing, again, in Hillsborough County. Your also other requirements is your nonprofit must be active, open, and operating. And this means virtually or in person for at least 1 calendar year prior to the date of your submission. You must be a registered 501c3 nonprofit and fully licensed. And then you need to attest to how you've been impacted by COVID. And this is the impact that you've experienced since March 13th of 2021. And these are the 4 areas. So the funding is for those nonprofits that have been impacted by loss of revenue. And this may be, your organization had to shut down temporarily, maybe you lost sponsorships or lost fundraising opportunities, unplanned costs, such as related to meeting safety and health standards. And this may be modifying your facility, having to purchase PPE, unplanned costs for new programming that may be needed to help those that are being impacted by COVID. A lot of our nonprofits have had to pivot, seeing new needs in the community and had to develop programs to address those needs. And then lastly, unplanned costs related to technology for enabling virtual work So Zoom licenses, additional laptops, and things of those natures. So those are the high level eligibility requirements that you will have to attest to, like I said, in the beginning of the application, but then we'll be asked to kind of go a little bit deeper for us once you go into the application further. Next slide, Jessica. One of these kind of additional levels is going to be your narrative. You are asked to provide a brief narrative about the impact of COVID-19 on your nonprofit. So what you'll have done is you will have picked one or more of those four criteria that I just went over, and then we're going to ask you to give us more detail in this area. So not just that you lost money because you had a loss of revenue, but we want to understand is that loss of revenue because an annual fundraising event was not able to be executed because of social distancing, or maybe you had to have Zoom licenses and additional firewalls for security reasons and things like that, those types of expenses. So there is a brief narrative that we ask you to provide to us. We also ask for some attestations. One, that you have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We ask that these funds are used solely for the time frame that we've provided, that you haven't already received reimbursement for the expenses that you're using this funding source for. We're asking that you attest to providing us a final use report, and Jessica will note a little bit about that later in this presentation. We want to make sure that you don't admit or misrepresent anything in your application, and that you understand that this may be subject to random audits for up to 5 years. These are federal funds, and they are being distributed through the county. And so we do need to make sure that you're keeping records and are prepared that this could be randomly audited at any time. As far as the documentation that you're going to be required to upload, so we encourage you, while you can get into the portal and look at the application ahead of time, these are the main pieces that may take you a little bit more time. So you're going to want to start gathering them as soon as possible. First is your IRS Form 990. This can be a 990 from 2019, 2020, or 2021. For those organizations that are not required to file an IRS Form 990, you can submit an independently audited financial statement. And this could be a 990N, a 990 Easy, or a traditional 990 form, depending on the size of your organization. But again, the independently audited financial statement is for those organizations that are not required to report to the IRS, such as churches. We're also going to ask for a signed W-9 form. This needs to be the most recent 2018 version of a W-9. We have a link within the application, so you can easily print it out if you don't have that one already signed by someone in your leadership. So you can just link to that and print that out and have that signed. The thing that's important here is that the address on the Form 990 and on the W-9 should match the physical location that is in Hillsborough County. If for some reason these don't match up, and there's a variety of reasons why they might not match up, we then are going to ask you for an additional address verification. The additional address verification, which you can find more detail about on our webpage, is twofold. One, we're going to need some sort of documentation related to that physical address. This could be a utility bill, a lease. The utility bill needs to be within the last 2 months, the current lease for that location within Hillsborough. And then we're also going to ask for some documentation on your letterhead, noting why this discrepancy and attesting that this money will be spent in Hillsborough County related to the service that are provided here. A sample template for that letter is also available within the application, so that you have that and you'll just be able to kind of print that out, have it signed, make sure it's on your letterhead, and upload it in your application. Next slide, Jessica. And probably what everybody's most curious about is the funding levels. And this is different. So if you had heard about this funding, whether you applied through Community Foundation Tampa Bay last time with the CARES funding, or you were ineligible last time, it's really important to note that these levels have changed. So there is no longer a minimum threshold for revenue with this funding, but there's some additional levels. An award of $2,500 will be given to agencies with a revenue under $49,000 a year. Level 2, which is $10,000, is for organizations with an annual revenue between $50,000 and $99,999. Sorry, and my slides cut off, apologize. Level 3 is 20,000, and that's with revenue of $100,000 or $499,999. And then for agencies with revenue over $500,000, the level is 30,000. So the award is 30,000. The revenue levels are going to be based off the most recent 990 that you are uploading. And so that's how we're going to make those determinations about your revenue. And I think that was all that I had. So Jessica, you want to take it from here?
So hi, my name is Jessica Seitz. I am the Director of Nonprofit Relations at Community Foundation Tampa Bay, and very much involved in this application process. So I wanted to give you some information about how to access the application, and then a little bit more information about the application. So if you go to our website, cftampabay.org, there'll be a pop-up on the page, and you can click that to learn more about the ARP Safety Net program. It's going to take you to a web page that gives you lots of information, and we're going to share those links on another slide here in a few minutes as well. So there's a link to apply there, and that will take you right to the login page for our online grant portal. If your organization already has an account and you need to be added to that account because you don't have login credentials, you can contact our community impact specialist, Desiree Ward. You will see her contact information right there on the login page, and she will help you get set up with new or with your login credentials. If your organization does not already have an account, you can click the Create New Account button, and you'll be asked to enter some information about your organization, about your leadership, and about yourself, and then you'll be all set to start an application. Now, if you do have login credentials, but you don't remember your password, there is this Forgot Your Password hyperlink right there below the Create New Account and Login buttons on the login page. So also here is the direct link to the online grant portal. We will be sharing this PowerPoint after the webinar today, so you'll be able to have these URLs available to you. All right, so application question overview. The way that this application is designed is that depending on how you answer certain questions, additional questions will pop up. So the first thing you're going to see after you click the apply button for this opportunity is an acknowledgement. So it's going to have a series of statements, and you have to agree to those. Once you've agreed to that acknowledgement, some more questions will pop up, and these are going to be the eligibility questions that Katie was referring to. So as long as you answer those questions in a way that makes you eligible for this opportunity, the rest of the application will pop up. Another area where you'll see additional questions pop up is related to the services. So there is a question that asks you which of those 8 types of services that Katie discussed that your organization provides, and you can select all that apply. For each one of those that you select, you'll then be prompted to select the subcategories that Katie was referring to. And there is the opportunity there to provide other, something that you can type in if you don't see the service that you're providing on the application as an option. If you do choose other, and you should really try to fit under those categories if you do, but if you don't, you can let us know what service you provide. We will be reviewing those other answers and sharing those with the county if we have a question about whether that would be an eligible service. So all other answers that are typed in will be reviewed for eligibility. Common errors in the application. A lot of errors we see are related to the W-9 form. So you are going to be prompted to enter a physical location on the application, your Hillsborough County physical location. The W-9 that you upload to the application needs to have an address on it that matches the location you entered in the application. If it does not, we will be contacting you, and we will be asking you which address is appropriate. By the way, post office boxes are not considered a physical location. So if your W-9 has a PO box on it, you can guarantee we're going to be in touch with you asking you to submit another W-9 with a physical location on it. And that matches the application. Now, if you have a physical location on the W-9 that doesn't match the application, we'll be reaching out to you to ask you which location is it we're using. We often see that the 990 form has a post office box on it, or maybe it's a headquarters, like Katie had mentioned earlier. It's a different location in another part of the state or country. If that address does not match your physical location, like Katie said, we will be requiring you to submit additional information. There will be a question on the application that says, does the address on your 990 match the address you entered on the application? And if it does not, there will be additional questions that pop up to prompt you to upload the documentation. So some of the errors we see with documentation proving your physical location could be that the name of your organization is not included on that document. So if you have a utility bill, we need to be able to see the name of your organization on that utility bill, as well as the physical location address on that bill. So that's one of the common errors that we see. Back to the W-9, like Katie mentioned earlier, it does need to be a 2018 version of the W-9 form. It needs to be signed. It needs to be dated. And you need to make sure that your EIN on there is correct. So you would be surprised if you see some errors and typos with the EIN. All of these little errors will slow down the application process. So we say we will give you a notification within 2 weeks of a completed application. However, if we require follow-up to get in touch with you, that is going to slow the process down and you won't have an answer in 2 weeks. If you have to provide additional documentation to prove your physical location within Hillsborough County, Katie mentioned that you would also have to submit a letter, and we do provide the language for you in a template so that you know what to put in, what information to include in this letter. It needs to be on letterhead. So if we don't get that letter on letterhead and it's not dated and it's not signed, we'll be reaching out to you for that as well. So if your organization files a 990N postcard and maybe you do that online, I've seen where some organizations upload, rather than the information that's on the postcard, they will upload a confirmation screen that from, I guess, from the IRS website that says you've submitted your 990 form. That is not sufficient. It actually needs to be a picture of the postcard. Whether you have that in electronic form, you can go retrieve it yourself. If you can't access it for some reason or you didn't save it, you can retrieve it from the IRS website using the IRS tax exempt organization tool. So sometimes that's where we go look at the documents and the IRS forms that you've submitted to the IRS as well when we're verifying certain information. Katie, did I miss any common errors that you can think of?
Not that I can think of, and I think just to emphasize that as I know we're going to emphasize it again on the next slide, the FAQs, because Community Foundation did distribute this money previously under the CARES Act, I think we've caught a lot of the common errors and really tried to make this application as user-friendly as possible and to address some of the issues ahead of time, because unfortunately, some of the missteps, it creates a little bit of a lag in us being able to approve. So please, please, please refer to our FAQ page. And that I think is a really great resource.
Thank you. Okay, so the review process, awards and reporting. So first of all, make sure your application is complete. Like I mentioned before, those follow-ups where we have to reach out to you to get additional documentation, that process does take time. So once your application is considered complete and we have all the documentation we need from you, you should have an outcome notification via email within 2 weeks. So that notification does come via email, and then we will send your check. Your check's going to be put in the mail within a couple of days after you're receiving that email notification of an approved award. So you do have, for your organization's account, you have an address associated with that. That is where the check is going to be mailed. It will not be mailed to the physical location that you enter on your application. It will be mailed to the address on your organization's account. So you might want to double check that, make sure it's right, make sure that's the mailing address where you want your payment sent. Approved applicants must use the portal to complete an online funds spent report within 45 days of receiving the award. So when you receive that email notification letting you know that you've been approved, if you have been approved, you will also be notified at that time that you've been assigned a financial use report to complete. You'll see a due date on there when you log into you have to log into the online grant portal also to access this report. If you're on your applicant dashboard, this is one of the frequently asked questions I've been starting to get now that reports are starting to be due, is how do I get to that report? It's not the easiest thing to see in the portal. So if you're on your applicant dashboard, you'll see that you have active requests, and some of you are already familiar with our grant portal pretty much. You're going to want to look for the listing for this particular program, Hillsborough County's American Rescue Plan Nonprofit Safety Net Program. You'll see you have a follow-up form assigned to you. There'll be a little blue edit hyperlink. So we are actually going to add some additional information on how to access this report to our frequently asked questions page. And we'll make sure that you have the link to that frequently asked questions page in your notification email. So again, that report is due 45 days after receiving the award. Since we will not be accepting applications any later than June 10th, those who are awarded later down the road will have a due date no later than August 12th, 2022. You're definitely going to want to keep records of your expenditures, or if you have lost revenue, and that's the reason why you're able to participate in this program. That was your impact by COVID, was that you lost revenue because you weren't able to have your fundraisers or things like that. You're going to need to be able to illustrate that you did lose money from a fundraiser. So whether that's, or that you had to cancel a fundraiser. So whether that's an email that you sent to somebody or to potential attendees saying, unfortunately, we had to cancel this event because of COVID, because of a shutdown, or being able to show us how much you may have made in a prior year for a particular fundraiser and how you had to cancel that one this year, weren't able to hold it this year. So there will be some due diligence if you are randomly selected for an audit. You will be able to need to show us that information. So definitely keep records of your expenditures, of your cancellations, of your losses, so that you can share that with us if needed. And finally, resources. So like I said, that we are going to make this PowerPoint available to all of you today, as well as those who were unable to attend. There's our webpage regarding the safety net, our webpage with frequently asked questions. And then if you have questions or more information, if you need assistance accessing the online grant portal, please contact Desiree Ward. There is her email address and her telephone number. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
I did want to address one question that came up in the chat and just clarify, because I think there's a lot of questions around eligibility. So a few things. One, if you did receive CARES Act funding through this process previously, you are eligible again. These expenses are different. Those expenses would have been before the March date in 2021. These expenses are for March 13th, 2021 on. So those are separate. There are some nonprofits that are receiving funding through the county's ARPA funding. And those nonprofits, for the most part, know who they are, but there is a link to a list of those nonprofits that are considered ineligible because they are receiving ARP funding through another mechanism within the county. If you are receiving ARP funding through, let's say, a different federal grant or some opportunities, I mean, I understand that money is coming from all different avenues. You are eligible, but not eligible to apply it to the same expenses. So you can't, say, oh, well, we're going to cover this Zoom license and then kind of double cover it. You're really going to need to make sure that if audited, that you can really show, okay, this funding went towards these expenses and this funding went towards these expenses. So just be very mindful that, and the federal government, they really are going to look at that, because you can't double apply for funds. And I hope that helps, Eleanor. If not, please reach out to me separately. We can kind of just double check on things if that would be helpful for you. Any other questions? You can either unmute yourself or type it in the chat. We're here, we're available. Is that moment? Okay, we've got another question. if you received the first funding, can the request be similar to what we received for the first round? Angela, if I'm understanding you correctly, if, for example, if you in the first round said you had a loss of revenue, yes, you could again say you had a loss of revenue because the time period's different. So as long as the expenses, there just has to be a clear distinction. You use the CARES Act funding for this impact during this time period, and then the ARP funding could be the same thing, because Lord knows you probably had to buy PPE for 24 months, or had continual loss of revenue. But it does just have to be separate. You cannot apply the CARES Act funding and then the ARP funding on top of that. It does have to be for the separate time period, which is specific for this ARP funding. Great. Any other questions?
I think, did we mention that you can be reimbursing yourself for expenses that you've already incurred going as far back as March 3rd, 2021? And if you're going to do that, it makes it really easy for you to be able to submit that report right away. You don't have to wait 45 days. You're welcome to just jump in there and get that off your plate right away.
Yeah, as someone who has written many grants, I know our immediate inclination is to come up with a budget for a grant opportunity. And this really isn't, this is not that type of funding. This funding is it could be to reimburse yourself for loss of revenue and things of that nature. And it does go backwards. So I would, always connect with your finance folks because of the fact that you'll want to be able to show the documentation. But as Jessica said, I know a lot of nonprofits are submitting board minutes that show loss of revenue. They're showing line items in their budgets for PPE. People weren't buying PPE, except for medical facilities. You can pretty much show that in 2018 and 2019, you didn't really have a line item for PPE in your budget. So those are unincurred expenses. You can show an increase in your technology in your budgets and things of that nature. So, really do think back on some of the expenses that were not planned for when it comes to the impact starting in March of 2021. Also, I just would like to ask that use your network. Please tell other nonprofits. This is a really amazing opportunity for Hillsborough-based nonprofits, and we want to make sure that they're aware of this because of the limited time frame and because the money is going fast. Please, please, please. Churches are eligible. Educational organizations are eligible. So there's a lot of entities out there that are providing safety net services we know have been impacted by COVID-19, and we want to make sure that if they are eligible, that they are applying for this opportunity. Well, if no other questions, then please, again, use the resources that we shared in the slides. Desiree is available and a wealth of information. And then we are happy. We understand that each nonprofit is unique. And when you're talking about funding, we just want to make sure that everybody's clear on what they're applying for and the requirements. And so we try to make it as easy as possible so that you can make the decisions and hopefully apply for this funding. All right.
And don't wait to apply. The money's going out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So definitely, as Rob was saying earlier, a good portion of it's gone out in this first 6 weeks. So don't wait to apply.